She's a good kid. That's what I thought when I turned on the lawn mower that bright Saturday morning. The Briggs and Stratton engine roared to life with just one tug of the starter cord. I glanced at the 2-year-old girl strapped into her car seat on our new porch. She looked at me and smiled. The sun was high in the sky, and the temperature was already over 80 degrees, even though it was barely 9 a.m. The famous Texas race was apparently everything it was cracked up to be. I had already changed into a tank top and shorts to try to tame the overgrown forest that called itself the lawn in front of our new home in suburban Dallas. If you had told me 2 years ago that I would be a single parent living in Texas on the QT, I would have laughed at you. But that's how I was. When I first made my way across the overgrown lawn, it seemed like I was always looking over my shoulder. I think so, both figuratively and literally. I was literally looking over my shoulder to make sure my daughter was okay. I moved the car seat far enough away from the edge that I didn't have to worry about her rocking motions causing the seat to fall off the low porch. But I also did it to keep her out of the sun. As usual, I made sure she was close enough that she could see me from across the yard. Somehow, at 29, pushing through the overgrown grass, I felt old. I remembered that when I was a kid, I could mow the grass at my parents' house, and then mow two neighboring neighbors' houses in about 2 hours, and not even have to breathe heavily. I especially liked taking care of the grass at my neighbors' houses because they would pay me. But now I was only halfway through with a much smaller patch of grass, and I was exhausted. I almost didn't hear her approach. She was definitely light on her feet. When I heard her, she was only a few feet away from me. I turned around, ready to either fight or grab my daughter and run. She was already sitting in her car seat, and my Mustang was pointed towards the street in our driveway. In the car, I kept copies of all our important documents, as well as a good selection of crafts. If necessary, we can be anywhere in a matter of seconds. But there was no need for this. "Hello, neighbor," she smiled. She was a bigger girl, a very large girl, but she was the most beautiful woman I have ever seen. There was something almost musical in her voice. She was extremely proportionate for her size. Her breasts were huge. Her waist was quite small for a big girl, and her ass was quite curvy. Her legs were very tight, tanned and shiny with some lotion or oil. Her legs attracted me like magnets. Her shoes were very tiny, open-toed, and her toenails were painted the same shade as my Mustang. She didn't shy away from my assessment. In fact, she enjoyed it. My gaze seemed to feel the warm rays of the sun on her lush curves. "Welcome to the area," she exclaimed. "I was thinking of coming and meeting you and the woman in your life. If there is anything I can do to help you settle into our small town, just ask." I smiled and tried not to look at her breasts, but failed. "Then let's meet her," I said. That's when I noticed the tray she was carrying. On the tray were 3 frosted glasses with a nameless liquid. We walked up to the porch, and I stopped in front of the car seat. "This is my daughter Alyssa. I call her Ellie for short." She placed the tray on the porch and looked at my daughter. Ellie's face immediately distorted. Her small lips pursed and her eyes became hard, as if the woman had invaded our territory. "Oh my God," the woman exclaimed. "She has the same hair color, your eyes, and even your nose. Does she have any of her mother's traits? Bring the lady of the house here so I can meet her too." "You just met her," I said. "I'm Mike. It's just Ellie and me." "Even better," she chuckled, her smile brightening a little. "I'm Margarita. You can call me Rita. I saw you working in the yard and thought I'd invite you two to dinner on my deck later." "We'd really like to," I said, "if it's not difficult." She smiled and reached for the forgotten tray. "And since you work here in the heat, I brought you some of my famous." "Water?" I said briefly. She leaned back, sitting on the porch, which only seemed to make them even more noticeable. "No, stupid," she smiled. "This is my world-famous lemonade. Could you?" In that second, everything changed. The birds seemed to have stopped singing. I was noticeably tense. Ellie's face turned red, and she began to cry, reaching for me as soon as it started. "What's happened?" she asked, confused. "I think she sunbathed too much," I spat. I'm going to take her inside. But, she said behind me as I grabbed my daughter and ran into our house. It took me almost an hour to calm Ellie down. I fed her and cleaned up the milk she spilled. Then I did her favorite thing. I picked her up and carried her around the house, rocking her and telling her her favorite story. It only took 5 minutes to get her to fall asleep. When she fell asleep, I put her in her car seat and went to cut the grass. Perhaps I was fueled by anger, or maybe I did the tougher sections in the morning, but it didn't take me long to finish the yard. After that, I took out a bucket, pulled out the cart with supplies, and washed the car. When I finished, I heard two things competing for my attention and curiosity. The first was the sound of Ellie waking up on the porch and calling for me, trying to get out of her car seat. Ellie could walk as well as any 2-year-old, but she couldn't unbuckle her car seat. It's gotten her out of trouble more times than I can remember. As I was rescuing my daughter from her car seat, I heard a second thing that piqued my curiosity. It was the sound of soft piano music coming from the house next door. I wondered if Rita played the piano. I went up to the second floor of our house and looked out the window into the neighboring yard. Her yard, unlike mine, was beautifully decorated. It had a very nice terrace and what appeared to be a jacuzzi. Rita was lying on a sun lounger on the terrace. She was wearing a very revealing swimsuit, despite her size. She was reading some documents and seemed to be taking notes on them. I got the impression that perhaps she was a teacher grading papers. Another thing that supported this theory was the glasses she wore on the tip of her beautiful nose. I have to admit that I spent more time looking at her huge breasts that were literally bulging out of her swimsuit top. She looked around as if her chest had sensors, and she could tell that someone was looking at her. Her dark red hair sparkled in the setting sun, and the expression on her heart-shaped face was angelic. I started to feel bad about the way I treated her earlier. "Are you hungry, Ellie?" I asked my daughter. "Hungry, Ellie," she said. I picked her up in one arm and headed into our backyard. I knocked on the high fence between our yards and said loudly, "Hey." A few seconds later, I heard the sound of something being dragged towards the fence. Then I saw Rita's beautiful head peeking over the top of the fence. She smiled slyly. The way her nose wrinkled amazed me. Her eyes were huge. They were the brightest brown eyes I had ever seen. Her long eyelashes and perfect bow-shaped lips made it impossible to take your eyes off her. "Mike, can you hear me?" she asked. "Isn't the music too loud? Why are you looking at me like that?" I shook my head first to clear it and then told her, "Rita, I came to apologize for the way I acted earlier. In fact, it had nothing to do with you. I think I was remembering something from our past, and it scared me." "Acknowledged," she smiled, "but I'm a tough girl. You didn't really do anything wrong. It happens. People are different. Trust me, I know not everyone likes me." So isn't it too late for that dinner you promised us?" I smiled. "I didn't promise," she objected with a smile. "I proposed." "And I accepted," I replied with a smile in return. "So here I go." I handed Ellie to her over the fence, and she was surprised, but took it. Then I climbed over the fence to her loud laughter. "Wow, you must be really hungry," she laughed. "Hungry, Ellie," my daughter exclaimed. "I'll change into something less comfortable while you fire up the grill," Rita said. "You don't have to change for me," I offered. She handed Ellie to me and headed towards her house. I put my daughter on the chaise longue on which Rita had just been lying. I walked over to the grill. It was a small gas grill. It didn't have a start button, but it wasn't hard to figure out. I turned on the gas using the valve attached to the gas cylinder, and then lit the burner using a lighter that was on the shelf next to the grill. A few minutes later, Rita returned with a couple of very tasty-looking steaks and corn. The steaks were already seasoned and marinated. I looked at her with suspicion. "You knew I'd be back," I said. "I took a chance," she smiled. I turned around and saw my daughter trying to get her feet off the lounge chair. Her feet touched the deck, and she fell on her butt and then stood up. She walked as quickly as possible to the edge of the terrace. I turned quickly to see what had caught her attention. Curled up in the corner of the terrace on a large pillow lay a large cat. Ellie walked up to the cat and introduced herself. "Ellie, the cat," she said proudly. She then got down on one knee and started petting the cat and giggling. "Don't worry, it won't hurt her. She's a very old, very kind cat," Rita said. I placed the steaks on the grill and I sat down to watch Ellie play with her new friend as the sun set. We had a good time and the conversation flowed freely. The playful exchanges between Rita and I were evidence of our almost instant attraction. She was very open, and I often found myself getting lost in her big brown eyes. Sometimes her words were so funny and honest that I was sure I was falling in love with her. I left once to go home to get Ellie's favorite food. I brought her her favorite chicken nuggets, which I heated up on the grill, and applesauce for dessert. I also brought green beans, although she usually has to be distracted or very hungry to get her to eat those. Surprisingly, this time I was even able to convince her not to come home with me. "Ellie, let's go home for dinner, honey," I told her. "Ellie, cat, yes, yes," she said firmly. Apparently, the look on my face was priceless. Ellie had never chosen something over me before, and the cat surpassed me. "Relax, Mike," Rita said. "I won't let anything happen to her in those 3 minutes until you run home and bring her dinner." My look must have been skeptical because she kept talking. If only she knew what a leap of faith it was for me to trust her. But for some reason I was sure that I could trust Rita. I was about to climb back over the fence and heard her laugh behind me. I turned around and the laughter reflected in those brown eyes stole my heart again. "I don't think you should look at my butt while you're climbing back over the fence, but wouldn't it be easier to use the gate?" she laughed. "Which gate?" I asked naively. She pointed, and I saw a gate only 10 feet from where I was trying to climb over. "You know what's about 3 feet from your gate on my side?" she asked. I shrugged, still lost in her eyes. "Your gate," she laughed. I went to the gate, opened it, and closed it behind me. As she said, the gate in her fence was very close to mine, which I had not noticed before. I quickly made it to the kitchen and brought back everything Ellie needed for dinner. While Ellie ate, we continued talking. Rita told me about herself. She grew up in an ordinary family in Florida. She thought there was nothing special about her. Her breasts started growing at an early age and never stopped. After college, she couldn't find a job and started modeling. "I know this will shock you because of my body," she said shyly. "Not at all," I replied. "I can totally imagine you as a model." "Mike, no, you couldn't," she said. "It was humiliating. It wasn't really modeling. I was mostly modeling lingerie. I was very embarrassed. The money was good, but as soon as I had the opportunity to go out, I did it. My current job allows me to stay clothed and use the degree I worked so hard to earn in college. I'm the editor of a women's lifestyle magazine." She looked at me and waved her hand in front of my face. "I'm so bored that you fell asleep listening to me, huh?" she asked. "No, Rita," I said, smiling. "You are so beautiful that I fall into a trance looking at you." She suddenly burst out laughing and didn't stop until she noticed that I wasn't laughing. "Mike, I'm fat," she said. "I think you're perfect the way you are," I told her. As if to prove that women are the most incomprehensible creatures on earth, she smiled. But at the same time, a tear rolled down her cheek, and those beautiful eyes into which I looked all day lost a little of their shine. Her next move was clearly an attempt to change the mood. "Mike, I think the steaks are ready," she said, "and I think we should probably eat at your place." I looked where she was pointing and saw Ellie quickly falling asleep with one arm on Rita's satisfied cat. "I'll get the food. You put the baby to bed," she said. Even as I said this, I felt trembling. I picked up my sleeping daughter and carried her home. I put her in bed and placed one of her favorite stuffed animals next to her. As usual, I left her room door open and turned on the hallway light in case she got up in the middle of the night. I also turned on the baby monitor. Since Ellie could talk and walk, I didn't really need a monitor, but I used it anyway. I went into the kitchen looking for Rita and didn't find her. She was sitting on the sofa in front of my fireplace. I wondered why the hell there was a fireplace in a house in Texas. "Can we light it?" she asked. She pulled out her lower lip and I realized that I could never refuse her. A few minutes later, we sat in the dark, illuminated only by the light from the fireplace. The air conditioning kept the Texas heat at bay and kept the fire from making the house any hotter. "It's so romantic," she said. "This makes everything worse." "What's worse?" I asked. "Mike, I'm a good woman, so what you want won't happen today," she said, looking at me as if she was hurt. She moved closer to me and laid her head on my shoulder. "Mike, I haven't told you everything," she said. "I missed a lot of details. After college, finding a job was difficult. All the offers they gave me sounded tempting, but the pay was so low that I could not live on them. That's why I took up modeling in the first place. And Mike, the world really is very fucked up. I didn't even realize how bad some people could be. A lot of the guys I met promised me mountains of gold." Another tear escaped, and her voice wavered. I hugged her tighter. "Mike, most of them just wanted one thing. The worst was the guy who had been dating me for a few weeks. He painted the most beautiful pictures of our future. We were going to do this and that. He was old-fashioned like me, so we got engaged after a year of our relationship. So I put everything into it, and I really thought I loved him. We dated for about a month when I finally went to bed with him. There was no second night. The next morning, I woke up with a heart full of love that I could barely contain. The next day at work, I found out that I was the butt of all the jokes. Every guy in the studio was staring at me and making snide remarks. I tried to call him, but his number was always on voicemail. During lunch break, Brenda dragged me into the women's room and told me that my boyfriend had told everyone he dated that he slept with me. He told them everything they wanted to know about my body, including some things that weren't true. Even though we were best friends, Brenda had a hard time telling me the rest. That bastard had somehow secretly placed his cell phone on the table next to the bed, and he had a video. He posted the video online, and I literally had to sue him to get him to take it down. And he told everyone about it. I haven't dated since then, or at least I haven't, because I just lost the ability to trust people. I know I'm a big fat cow, but I have feelings too. I've often heard that for every guy who treats women badly, there's some asshole of a woman who made him that way. But Mike, there are a lot of really bad men too. I have a feeling that I like you. You're not like other guys. I see that you are also looking at my breasts, which is probably normal for men, but you spent a lot of time today looking at my face, and you like it. But if you want to know me, and I really hope you do, you'll have to take the time to sleep with me." She seemed almost sad as she said this. "Mike, I like you too," she said, and she squeezed my hand as if trying to emphasize her words. "But we need to move very slowly because I don't want to get hurt again." I then laughed, and her beautiful face distorted. I stood up and walked away from her. When I returned, she was standing and collecting her things. "Where are you going?" I asked. "I told you my sad little story, and you couldn't wait to leave me," she said. "It made me sad, but it seems like you're just another guy who thought a fat girl was so desperate for love that she'd be an easy target." "Rita, you're starting to annoy me," I said. "A woman as beautiful as you should have more confidence. So let's go back to your seat." "Where is my place, really?" she asked, raising one eyebrow. "Right next to me, wherever I am," I said. She smiled one of those brilliant smiles and walked up to me in front of the fire. "Rita, I'm sorry for what happened to you. That guy was a real jerk. But there are plenty of them on both sides of the fence, and you don't have a monopoly on heartache, honey. I'm glad you told me your story, but you have to believe that not all the people you meet are the same. You have to learn to trust again. Rita, do you know why I got up a few minutes ago? I went to check on Ellie. It's in my blood. I always check it. I get up in the middle of the night to check on her, and then go back to bed. I should have told you where I was going. Darling, what I'm about to say could get me into a lot of trouble. But I trust you, so I'll take the risk. I've never trusted anyone with this before. So this should give you an idea of how I feel about you. I work for the city. I'm a civil engineer. I'm still learning at this job in Dallas. It's a little different than doing the same job back in Michigan. but I guess each city is different. I'm 29 now, so yes, I'm a couple of years younger than you, and that doesn't matter at all to me. But when it started, I was 26 and fresh out of college. Yes, I didn't get my degree until I was 24. I went to college for 6 years to get a 4-year engineering degree. I'm not a fool. The first 2 years I studied to be a football player and a funny guy. I was sure I was going to go to the NFL, so I didn't even consider other options. I didn't have a plan B. During my sophomore year, I suffered an injury that sidelined me for 3 months and ended all my hopes of playing professional football. In retrospect, it was a good thing, and it's even better that it happened when it happened. It was a hard pill to swallow, but my parents raised me right. It took me a while to be able to look at my old game films and see that I could never succeed. I played football every day from the age of 5 until the day I got injured. I spent 15 damn years sacrificing everything for the football gods. Lots of people do this. There are states like Ohio that are real football factories. I like it here, but Texas is kind of like that too. In any case, there are many players who are great at the college level, but turn out to be failures at the professional level. I can think of Joey Harrington, Rodney Peete, Tim Tebow, and several recent Michigan quarterbacks who all fit that profile. Anyway, I was one of them. I had a lot of coaches and mentors who played me down and inflated my ego, hoping for a piece of the pie when I turned pro. But when I reviewed my game notes after the injury, it became clear to me that I looked ridiculous on the field. When I returned to school after my injury, I realized that I had wasted 2 years. Most of the classes I took were useless. I wasn't even serious enough to choose a major. If you look at colleges today, the situation is the same. Any athlete who lists general education as their major but does not take English or math classes is likely majoring in their sport. So after I graduated, I decided to stay in Michigan. I liked it there. I liked the change of seasons. I loved that I could fish and water ski all summer and do whatever I wanted in tropical places in the summer, and then do whatever I wanted in the snow belt states in the winter. Spring and fall in Michigan have to be seen to be believed. People from all over the world go there to enjoy the fall colors, but damn, I probably won't be going back there anytime soon. And here I was at work in the Detroit suburbs, where I was sent 2 years after college. The state was building a new freeway ramp. We have mapped all affected homes in the area, but some people who were planning to stay in their homes will also be affected. We had to reroute or relocate many power lines, gas lines, telephone lines, and sewer pipes to make way for the freeway. It was in one of these houses that I met her. I got out of the truck with our crew to inform her that we would be marking gas pipes and underground utilities on her property. She appeared to be a woman in her mid to late 30s. She said she was 32, but I found out much later that she had lied to me, and it was one of the least significant lies. She looked like your average early middle-aged woman. She really didn't stand out at all. You meet such women on the street every day. Her hair was shoulder length, light brown, inconspicuous. She also wore glasses. She wore heavy eye makeup under her glasses, which looked rather strange. The day we started working on her property, she was smoking on the porch of her little ranch house. She looked at me and continued to look. It was strange, even when I caught her eye, she didn't look away. She even came over to find out what I was doing. While my guys were putting up flags and markers or testing the ground to find out the location of certain objects, I was measuring the area. This way I could draw a detailed, updated map of the site. After a while, she was as close to me as you are now. She wasn't shy about her body or her several tattoos. And there is something sexy about a woman over 30. She returned to the house and after a while returned with a glass. "Would you like some of my famous lemonade?" she asked. I thanked her and drank it. It was damn hot outside, and damn, that lemonade was really good. "Do you want more?" she asked after I had emptied the first glass. "I don't want to cause you any trouble," I said. "It's no trouble at all, dear," she said, walking back into the house. As soon as she left, my boys started teasing me. "Are you going to see her now, or will you come back later?" asked my foreman, Ronald Donald. Everyone just called him Mac. "What are you talking about, Mac?" I asked. "Mike, that old maid burns out for you," he laughed. "Hey, she's not that old," I said. "She's only 32. Everyone started laughing at that too. She spent the entire evening flexing and posing in front of me, while my boys couldn't help but laugh. For a lonely young man, such attention was flattering, and when it was time to clean up, she directly offered me dinner. "Don't you think that after you're done, you'll want to come back and save the old lady the pain of having dinner alone?" she asked. "I'm not used to eating dinner alone. I won't pressure you, but I just thought that since we're both single and I don't like eating alone, that is, without obligations, and I don't expect anything from you if it weren't convenient. Well, I don't want to put pressure on you. If you come, we'll eat. But if not, well, okay." My guys were making fun of me the whole way back to the office, and they didn't even know about her invitation to dinner. But despite their jokes, I returned after work. It was probably because I was young and lonely, so the prospect of a free dinner and implied sex was pretty hard to turn down. When I arrived at her house, she was sitting on a lawn chair on the front porch. She reached into the beer she was drinking and pulled out a glass of lemonade that just sat there as if she was sure I would come. I just took the glass and took a sip. "That famous lemonade attracts them every time," she chuckled. "Why do you call him famous?" I asked. "Honey, that's just what I call him," she said. "It doesn't mean anything. I doubt anyone outside of my friends and family has ever heard of me, let alone my lemonade. But the thing is, everyone likes to think they're special. We all want to think there's one or two things we're better at on this big blue marble. And I'm just another stalk of grass in the big backyard. I can only name two things that I'm really good at. I'm really, really good at two things." "So what?" I began to speak. She smiled and didn't even wait for me to finish the question she had been asking since the moment I arrived. In fact, she had been leading me on this point since we met this morning. "Lemonade and sex," she said without smiling. She said it in the same matter-of-fact tone as if I had said, "My Mustang's exhaust system is loud as hell." I've never heard a woman be so open about sex before. I was shocked. I almost choked on the lemonade I had just taken. She waited until I could breathe again before asking the next question. "You tasted the lemonade," she said, smiling. "Would you like to try the other part?" The rest of that evening remained a blur. I don't remember anything except her question. The next day, while having lunch, details began to come back to me. She woke me up in the morning to find out what time I needed to be at work. 9, I said. I was exhausted. "Okay," she said. "That gives us a couple of hours." I left at 7:30 to go home and shower before going to work. "When will you come back?" she asked. I was confused. I don't remember saying I'd be back. "Look, I began. "Leanne," she said, smiling. "And your name is Mike, right?" I nodded. "Mike, I know I said no strings attached, but last night was special for me. Do you really have anything better tonight than what we just did?" I thought about it, and in less than a second. "No," I said. "I promise you dinner this time too," she said. "How about we grill something?" "Sounds good," I said. Then she kissed me. I returned to my apartment, took a shower, and changed into fresh clothes. I felt like something a dog had buried and then dug up. I was exhausted. But I was young, and I was shaking all over. I just had one of those nights that men talk about forever. I didn't say a word about what happened to the guys at work. I spent the day thinking about it. And in the light of day, I had to admit that there were some things I didn't like about that night. We didn't waste time talking. In fact, every time I tried to ask her something, she changed the subject. This meant that either she had something to hide, or she, like me, was only interested in sex and not in relationships. But it made sense. Why would an older woman like her, who owns her own home, be interested in someone as young as me? However, youth had its advantages, and by the time I finished work, I was already looking forward to our next meeting. How surprised I was when a very beautiful girl opened the door. She looked about my age or a little younger. We looked at each other, and I swear something happened. Leanne came to the door before we could say anything and grabbed my hand. "I see you have met my daughter," she said. I was driven into a dead end. However, I remembered my manners and came up with a lie to buy time while my brain rebooted. "Are you sure she is your daughter?" I asked. "You don't seem old enough to have a daughter that old." "She's not that old, stupid," Leanne said. "She's only 20. Lynn and I walked back to the porch. As we approached the porch, two dirty boys, about 7 and 10 or so, jumped out onto the porch and ran into the house. My chin dropped and Leanne simply smiled. "Are they yours too?" I asked. She nodded. "God, how many children do you have?" I asked her. "Only 5, she said. "The other 2 are visiting Aunt Kate for the summer. She has a farm. They will be home in about 3 weeks." I didn't even say anything. I was too shocked. "Okay, let's get the grill going," she said. "Mom, I'm going home to Brittany," Jean said. "I'll call and let you know I'm on my way before I get home." I lit the grill. Leanne brought out a couple of great steaks and some burgers. "Steaks for us," she smiled. "Boys only like hamburgers and hot dogs." I was the same, I said. My shock wore off, and soon the 4 of us were having a good time. I showed the boys how to play football while Leanne cleaned up. They had endless questions, like most kids their age, and I tried to answer them as honestly as I could. When the sun went down, Leanne took out a box of sparklers, and I lit them and played with the boys. Then we played hide and seek, in which I hid, and they tried to find me. But every time they came close, I jumped out and scared them to death. They screamed and ran back to the porch and wanted to do it again every time. I was almost a little sad when Leanne told me it was time for them to go to bed. When she returned, she was smiling. "I don't think they've had this much fun since I lost my husband," she said. I was going to ask her about it. I felt really bad for her, but she changed gears. I entered into a relationship with Leanne with the clear understanding that there would be no strings attached. In fact, she was the one who said it. But I knew when I felt good. Coming home every night, sleeping with Leanne, and playing with her kids was much better than going back to my crappy apartment with a can of soup and cable. I was so much better off than all the guys I worked with, married or single, that I didn't care. Most of my single friends went to bars every night. Most evenings they walked home alone. This is where the expression lucky comes from. This happened so rarely that they considered themselves lucky when it happened. My married friends have had a little more success. I knew what I had with Lynn. I was young and in love. I never said those words, but I was with her every night. I also started contributing to the family income. I loved her children too. There were very few nights when I didn't come home with some kind of snack or treat for them. The only fly in the ointment was Janna. Jean was Lynn's eldest daughter. She constantly found fault with everything her mother and I did. Whenever Leanne was away or just not looking, she would glance at me or do anything she could to tease me. "Why are you spending your nights with a woman who is too old for you?" One day she asked me. "Listen, Janna, I love your mother," I said, "and there may be a slight age difference between us, but if you love her too, you should be glad she's happy." She just looked at me and shook her head. 3 nights later, she was at it again. I told Lynn about Janna's games, but she just smiled. "Mike, this girl hasn't had a male role model since we lost my husband. She's just pretending because she wants some attention. Is there anything I should be worried about?" "Of course not," I said. "Then let her do whatever she wants." She said. "I understand, Janna," I said angrily. "Do you like me? You don't want me here." She started laughing. "Mike, what's wrong with you?" she asked. "The only thing I don't like is that you're in the wrong bed, but sooner or later." "I thought you weren't with men," I told her. "According to your mother." "There should always be a first time," she said. "When I look at you and her, I can hear the clock ticking in the background. On the other hand, you and I have all the time in the world. She can enjoy you for a while. You and I will be together." When she said this, I felt a shiver run down my spine. It was like someone was urinating on the ground that I would someday be buried under. I could see it in my mind. Whatever she can do for you, she said. I can. I will do it. I am her. We are exactly the same. I'm just in a younger, fresher, and more beautiful package. When Leanne went to bed that night, she was depressed. What's wrong, honey? I asked her. I really don't want things to end between us, she said softly. I'll miss it, she said. Why? I asked. No conditions, remember? She asked. Leanne, I love you, I said. Mike, I'm pregnant, she said. I didn't say a word. My doctor says I'm about 6 weeks along, so it must have been one of those first few nights we were together. Perhaps I overdid it. I'm really sorry. But I haven't been with anyone since I lost my husband. I'll be fine. I'm going to have to work really hard at this, I said. I mean, I already love your boys, and you'll have to look after me. What to watch? She asked. Leanne, I have to treat them equally, I said. I don't want others to feel disadvantaged or feel like I treat him better than others because he's mine. Mike, I'll let you see him whenever you want so. She began. I'll see him all the time, I said. I'm not going anywhere. There is no way I can leave you or my child. Mike, I'm still in shock that you say you love me, she said. That's old news, I said. Everyone already knows this. We'll need a bigger house, I said. The next 7.5 months were wonderful. We spent time together. We have truly become a family. But once again, Janna was the only problem. It must be me, she hissed. I have to carry your baby. Do you know how angry I am, how I look at you with her? Even when she became as big as a house, you stayed with her. You kissed her. This has not happened in any of her other pregnancies. You were supposed to be mine. When it came time to take Leanne to the hospital for Mike Jr.'s birth, I tiptoed around. I was happy and excited, but scared at the same time. Being a father was a big responsibility. I took her to the hospital, and she was taken to the delivery room. Lynn demanded that I be allowed to be in the room with her, and after much debate, she won. I changed into a robe and nervously entered the small room. Once there, it was all over in a second, or it was for me. I passed out. When I woke up, it was all over. I asked to meet with Lynn and my son. The nurse giggled slightly and shook her head. Leanne looked tired. She looked like she had just run a marathon. I know she is an ugly woman. All my friends thought she was almost a step above the trailer park woman of easy virtue. But at that moment, she was beautiful to me, and I began to have thoughts about our future. Are you disappointed? She asked. About what, dear? I asked. Honey, Mike Jr. is a girl, she smiled. We'll need a different name. We named her Alice after my mother, and to me, she was the most beautiful creature on earth. I knew what I needed to do, but something inside me was hesitant, and we were so busy with life and taking care of the baby that it was a full 6 months after Ellie was born that I got off my ass and bought Lynn a ring. More than anything, I wanted us all to be a family. Nothing brings people together like a shared secret, so I showed the ring to Janna to get her opinion. Her reaction was not what I expected. Take that damn thing back, she said quietly. Tears were streaming down her cheeks. You don't have to marry her, fool. You should marry me. And again, I felt strange. It seemed to me that Janna was telling the truth, so I waited and thought about it again. My mind and all logic told me that I should marry the mother of my child. So one Wednesday afternoon, I bought a large bouquet of flowers and headed home very early. All the children were at school, and Janna had gone somewhere. The house was empty. I looked into Ellie's crib. She was sleeping. The connection between my daughter and I existed from the moment I first saw her, but that day I had business with her mother. As I turned to leave Ellie's room, I heard a sound coming from the bedroom. I thought Leanne was turning over the mattress or something until I opened the door and saw horror. Leanne cheated on me with 2 of our neighbors. The first sound I remember is the sound of flowers falling from my senseless fingers. There was a fight. Mike, she's not worth it, Jean said. She spoke to me the way a mother speaks to a child after a tantrum. Mike, "Let's go for a ride in your Mustang," she said. "You can teach me to drive." She grabbed my hand and pulled me along. "We have a lot to do," she said. I still had the crumpled ring box in one hand. I didn't even think about it until Jean mentioned it. "Can I watch it again?" she asked. She took it from my hand very carefully. She opened the box and carefully took out the ring. The diamond in it sparkled in the sun coming through the broken window frame. "I changed my mind," said Jean. "Don't give it back. Give me a chance to earn it." "Shut up, Jean," Leanne snorted. "Go to your room so Mike and I can talk." "Mom, it sounds pretty stupid for you to talk about you and Mike when you cheated on him," Jean said. She took my hand and we left the house. We were just driving. We didn't talk. If silence can be considered a cure, I am living proof. After about an hour of driving in silence, I began to feel better. "I feel so stupid," I said. "Stupid, stupid, stupid." "Mike, why do you have to feel stupid?" she asked. "You didn't do anything wrong. It was her fault. I tried to tell you that she wasn't the one for you. But to be honest, she deceived me too. I thought she stopped sleeping with those guys when you started dating." I just looked at her. "Are you saying this has happened before?" I asked in shock. "Oh yes, she slept with them all the time," Jean said. "But they're married," I said, "and she's friends with their wives." "It means nothing to her," said Jean. "My mother is the kind of woman who doesn't know how to say no to men." There was silence in the car after that. "If it's any consolation, you're special to her. She never let a man move in with us until—" "Yes, I know," I interrupted sharply, "since your father died." "That bastard she called husband was not my father," Jean said contemptuously. "And legally, he wasn't her husband either. He was just one of the people she was living with. He was a bastard. And he didn't die. Do you know how she lost him? They went to Walmart, and while she wandered around the store, he was supposedly in the tool department. When she finished shopping and went to look for him, he was nowhere to be found. She searched the entire store and called him on the speakerphone. She went out into the parking lot, and his truck disappeared while she was walking around. He returned home, collected all his things and everything he wanted to take, and left. I think he was tired of sleeping with her. "I need to decide what my next step will be," I said. "I'll drop you off at home. I have some things to do." I didn't even go into the yard. I stopped in front of the house and drove away as soon as she got out of the car. I returned to my old home and rented an apartment there. I called work and took the next day off. I told them that I needed to move and needed a day to move. I waited until the sun set to return to the house. I didn't want a loud fight with Leanne while the kids could hear it. It was already 10 o'clock in the evening when I knocked on the door. "Where have you been?" she asked angrily. "I've been calling you all day." "Where's your key?" "Leanne, I don't want to argue with you. I just came to pick up my things," I said. I took the papers out of my pocket and handed them to her. She simply put them on the table. "Mike, we need to talk," she said. "You're not going anywhere." "I already rented an apartment," I said. "Are the police looking for me?" "Nobody except me." "Listen, Mike, I love you. I feel terrible for what you saw. But there's no need to end our relationship over this. We're not married. I already told you I love you, Mike. And that gives you an advantage, but this does not mean that I am yours. We are not married. I never swore allegiance to you, so you need to reconsider your views, so I will forgive you, but I had to fix what you did to me. Mike, I'm 38 years old, and no one has ever fought over me before. I had to come up with something to explain everything to their wives. I was too shocked to say anything. I couldn't believe that this cheater was trying to blame me for all of this. I couldn't believe that she wanted to make me believe that it was my fault. One of my old coaches once told me that the best defense is a good attack. I probably expected Leanne to beg my forgiveness and apologize. Instead, she attacked, put the blame on me, and turned the whole situation into one where it seemed like I was at fault. I was too shocked to even speak. Luckily, I didn't have to say anything. "We have nothing to find out, Mom," said Janna. You're too stupid to talk. Mike's been living here for a year, Mom. He pays the bills. He buys us food. You have a child together, and all the kids look up to him as a stepfather. He plays with them. He takes them places. How many nights did he come home from work without some kind of treat or new game for them, Mom? Now Lyanna found herself on the defensive. Mom, do your friends even take care of your children? They've lived next to us for over 10 years, and I bet they don't even know the children's names. You and Mike have a child. Or have you forgotten about it? Lynn looked at the floor and tears welled up in her eyes. But Janna wasn't finished yet. She continued to attack. Mom, Mike loved you. Can you say the same about the two idiots you slept with? As for you not being his woman, why the hell do you think he was home in the middle of the day? I begged him not to do this. I didn't want him to get hurt. But he was stupid, Mom. Unlike those two guys you keep defending, Mike loved you, Mom. He didn't just want sex with you. He wanted you to be his mom, but in the best way. Jean reached into her back pocket and pulled out the ring I had forgotten about. Mom, Mike came home with a stupid big bouquet of flowers to take you to lunch and ask you to marry him. Can you believe it? How fucking stupid is that? I mean, who marries a woman 12 years older than him? Who would marry a woman who has 6 children and only one of them is his? You're right, Mom. There's something wrong with this guy. No wonder you're standing there defending these two assholes because of what Mike did when you broke his damn heart. Leanne just looked at the ring and then started crying. But don't worry, Mom, you hurt him too much. When Mike moved here, even with your welfare and food stamps, you were on the verge of losing your home. Since he paid the bills, you could use your benefits and the money Mike gave you for food to pay off your back taxes. Then you used food stamps, which you probably shouldn't have received because Mike's income disqualified us from buying food with it. Mike probably did. I don't know how smart you are with money, huh? But Mom, Mike is leaving. The best man you've ever had in your life walks out the door, and you stand there defending two creeps who treated you like a woman of easy virtue. What will you do without his income, Mom? Leanne continued to cry and could not look us in the eyes. I know what you're thinking, Mom. You think you'll just file to increase your Social Security benefits and then sue Mike for child support since you know what he does for a living and where he works. You'll get double pay for Alyssa. That won't happen, Mom, because Mike has already filed for child support for Alice. That's what these documents are for. We made sure to connect them with the state. You no longer have the right to receive money for Alice, and as soon as we are in a new place, we may even take her away from you. What the hell are you talking about, Jean? Leanne snapped. None of you are going anywhere. Mike isn't leaving for 2 reasons. Apparently, Leanne regained her balance and tried to attack again. She held up 2 slender fingers to emphasize her point. The number 1 reason is the kid he made. He saw how she grew. So okay, he's a good guy. He registered to pay her child support. While you were sitting on your ass texting those dumb girls you hang out with, you missed a few things, Jean. He always checks on her first thing in the morning, calls me at lunch. The first thing out of his mouth is, "How's Ellie? Mike is mad at me, but he won't leave the baby." Janna was a little deflated, and Leanne immediately pressed her advantage. The main reason Mike doesn't leave, though, is me, she said. He'll be gone for a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks, but he'll be back in my bed before you know it. Jean laughed at this. Who do you think will replace me? Lynn asked. She laughed even louder than Jean. Of course not you, Janna. I admit that you are more beautiful than me, and you're younger than me, but darling, that's all. He knows what he wants and how he wants it. Feelings are hurt, but he will still come back to me. You said it yourself, Mom, Janna said contemptuously. I'm younger and prettier than you. I can offer him what you can't. He will own me. He'll never come home and find 2 guys in his bed with me. And if he wants a child, we'll have 1 dam, we'll have 5 of them. Jean, go to your room now, Lyanna screamed. She stamped her foot. You heard me. Mom, I'm 20, not 9, said Janna. Mike, you gave her the papers. You listened to what she said. As you can see, she doesn't think she did anything wrong. She didn't even say she was sorry. There's nothing here for us. Let's leave. I know that you're hurt and upset, but we need to move on. I promise you, you won't regret it. As long as you pay child support, you can see Ellie whenever you want. Janna turned and left the room. I took one last look at Leanne and then followed Janna. I heard Leanne sob as she left. I didn't pay her any attention, but I stopped and checked on Ellie. She began to wake up in her crib. She needed to change her diaper. I sighed and did it. Then he took her to Leanne's room. I changed her diaper. She needs to be fed, I said. I'll go see her. Every day. Mike, don't go, she said. We can fix this. She looked at me and then at the baby in her arms. I'll check on her in the morning and after work, I said. But first I'll call, just in case someone comes to see you. Of course, it won't matter to me anymore if you do this. I'll only be here to see Ellie. The next few days were chaotic. I had to buy furniture because I left mine in my first apartment when I moved in with Leanne. Jean insisted on coming with me and choosing every detail, and everything had to be combined with everything else. It was a nightmare, and we could only shop in the evenings since I had to work during the day. My schedule was quite busy. I woke up early every morning so I could visit Ellie before work. Then, after work, I visited her again. Ellie arranged your tiny personality to suit my schedule. It got to the point that she woke up when I arrived, so I had to change her clothes and feed her. This meant that Lynn started getting up early to try and tease me, just like Jean had done before. So you're all ready with Janna? She asked me on the third morning. It's none of your business, I snapped at her. I'll take that as a refusal, she laughed. Leanne, I'm not a cheater, I said. Mike, it's only cheating if you get caught, she said. Besides, according to Janna's logic, you and I became a couple when we started sleeping together. If you don't do this, then you are not a couple yet, so there is no deception. I kissed Ellie and went to work. The funny thing is that the only thing that kept me from having sex with Janna was myself. She was 20 years old. In fact, she was closer to my age than her mother. We lived together, and we were definitely attracted to each other. So when I got home that evening, I was a little out of it. Janna prepared dinner for us. I guess I shouldn't have been surprised. Jean often looked after the children while Lynn and I were busy with other things. Her ability to cook cleanly and do laundry was to be expected. We sat down to the new dinner set that had just been delivered and prepared for a wonderful dinner. I complimented her on this several times, and she just smiled. So, Jean, why don't we try out this new flat-screen TV after dinner? I said. I don't think so, she smiled. I worked all day on arranging the furniture. Then I made you dinner, so I need to decide what we'll try next. And we're going to try out this new bedroom set. We ordered 2 bedroom sets, I said. We have one for you and one for me. Which one came? I could really use a good night's sleep. She just shook her head and laughed. Mike, when we were at the furniture store, you were still heartbroken over my stupid mother. But you are an adult and strong. You are strong enough for us to move on. There is only 1 bedroom set. I canceled the second one the day after we left the store. I know what happened this morning. My brother Terry and I are very close. He tells me everything that happens in this house. I was shocked then. I'm glad you didn't give in to her, honey, she said. But I need to give you a reason not to. After that, we didn't talk much. No pressure, honey. You don't have to do anything you're not ready for. We can just cuddle tonight, okay? I can live with that, I said. Mike, I just want you to be happy. I just want you to give us a chance, she said. Good night, honey, she said. I started thinking about how stupid I was. We ended up sleeping that night. So, a little over a month after we moved in together, I was happy again. Unfortunately, my happiness was cut short when I made it to Lynn's house one afternoon to visit my daughter for the second time that day. You're really good at sex, Mike, Leanne said. I must admit that we have a beautiful child, I said, so he must be very good at it. That's not what I was talking about, she said sadly. Our daughter will be the aunt of her sister or brother. What are you talking about, Leanne? I asked. Jean called me this morning, she said. This is the first time I've heard from my daughter since you stole her. She told me she was sick, so I asked her to come home. I promised her that she would return to you before you returned home. We went to see her doctor. She's pregnant, Mike. I'm too young to be a grandmother. Janna is too young to be a mother. You have to help me convince her to take care of this. I almost hit her. I kissed Ellie and drove home as fast as I could. I ran into the house and found her in the kitchen. Before she could say anything, I spoke to her. Jean, do you still have that ring that I was going to give to your mother? Yes, Mike, but we need to talk about, she began. Go take it, I said. She shrugged and went to get the ring. She's back. Jean, I need to ask you something, I said. Do you like this ring, or can you find something better? I've always loved that ring, she said. My mother never deserved this. Then put this on, I said. Mike, this is a wedding ring, she said. Are you asking me? Are you accepting? I asked. Oh, yes, please, she said. I should have been extremely happy. I was young. I had a great job and a nice home. Of course, I had my own Mustang. I was engaged to a beautiful woman who clearly loved me. Maybe I was just greedy. Perhaps Leanne influenced me more than I was willing to admit. But I had a number of problems that prevented me from being truly happy. First, there was Leanne. I may have been a child, but that bitch hurt me. Of course, I messed up her finances a little, and I even called CPS a couple of times, which caused her some grief. By kicking their asses, I also cost her the services of two of her buddies, but I was sure she could and probably had already found a replacement. But this was not enough. Janna was so happy that she almost burst. She made peace with her mother, and the two of them planned the biggest wedding I could afford. The poor girl was walking on cloud nine. I am a noble man, if not an honest one. I would do the right thing and think that maybe in time I would love Jean. I would definitely never leave our child. But every time I was with Janna, an unpleasant itch arose in the back of my head. The third part of my problem was Ellie. I hated having to travel somewhere else to see my baby. I hated her life with Leanne and not with me where she belonged. For Lynn, Ellie was a source of income. To Lynn, Ellie was just one of a fucking army of kids. For me, Ellie was my whole world. I enjoyed every new achievement she made. I was the one who decided that since Leanne was so busy with everything else, maybe Ellie should go to kindergarten. After CP's third visit revealed that while Leanne's family was suitable for older children, Ellie needed to do more with younger children. Lynn accused me of taking Jean away from home. In the end, she agreed to send Ellie to kindergarten if I paid half. I ended up choosing a place that Lynn thought was too expensive. I told her I would pay everything. In my opinion, the ultimate revenge would be for Ellie to move in with Janna and me after we get married. This will be Lynn's last slap in the face. I also have to admit that I am not a perfect person. I am a person who believes in justice. If someone shits on me, I'll shit on them back, and I'll shit on them until my guts are empty. However, after about a month, my world came crashing down. I arrived home early to take Jean to see the church we were considering for the wedding. Calm down, it's not what you think. She was sitting on the porch, waiting for me. She looked like a picture with a slight curve to her belly. I barely managed to persuade her to go to church. As usual, she was more interested in going to bed than going to church. But we went to church, and it was a wonderful place. It was perfect for us until we started finding out the price. It was at least 50% more expensive than other churches we looked at and was one of the smallest. I'm sure this priest is going to hell for the way he overburdened us with additional costs and fees on top of the price. But my Janna wanted this church, so we took it. I dropped her off at home and promised her a night of love when I returned, and she went up to the room to sleep. Before getting into the car, I decided to grab a sandwich since I had missed lunch. I heard Janna talking to someone. Okay, I'm an asshole. I still didn't trust her. What her mother did to me made me suspicious of anything and everything. I felt like an even bigger asshole when I picked up the phone in the kitchen and found her talking to her mother about church. I hated eavesdropping on them, but I wanted to hear Lionel's reaction. I guessed that she would suffer because of what she had lost, but she refused it. They talked about church and marriage for a while, and I learned something that made me angry. But after about 5 minutes of their conversation, I was shocked. "Mom, I'm still a little worried that Mike will find out the baby isn't his," Jean said. "Darling, men are all stupid," Lionel responded. "Just keep sleeping with him, and he'll be so happy he won't care. When everyone at the hospital starts telling him the baby looks like him, he'll be sure it's his. Maybe Mike really is especially stupid. I mean, he still thinks Ellie is his. Hell, I don't even know who her father is. The only thing I know is that it's not Mike, because I took one of those home pregnancy tests in a matter of hours. Before I met Mike, and I was already pregnant. He didn't notice that the baby was born first. He loves this baby, though. What an idiot just walks up and voluntarily pays child support for another guy, and he pays more for her daycare. How do I pay for the damn mortgage? Mom, I just have a bad feeling about this, Janna said. He's a really good guy. This is bad karma. Jean, bad karma that you slept with that stupid Ronnie. I've told you a million times that Ronnie is a loser. He never had a job. He has no future, and if you stayed with him, you would have nothing. But Mom, Ronnie loves me, Janna whined. What Ronnie loves is sex with you, Leanne spat. And you can continue to sleep with him whenever you want. Just make sure Mike is happy. And make sure that whenever Mike gives you money, I get my share. How much am I going to get from the church? It took everything I had to stay calm and hang up quietly so they wouldn't notice I was there. I went back to work. That day, I threw myself into work. And what I did while I was working was thought out. I thought about what a fool I was. When I looked at my life, I realized that most of what I thought was unreal. I have always considered myself a smart person. I have a higher education and a great job. But two women of easy virtue from a trailer park took me to school. Every step I took, they were always one step ahead of me. Deep down, most of what I did for, and with Jean, was just to get back at Lynn. I loved Lynn with all my heart, and she was just using me. Then I realized I sounded like a bitch. I wasn't the kind of guy who whined when things didn't go the way they wanted. I just had to figure out how and when. I also needed to know what I was going to do next. The only thing I had to do was make sure they didn't know what was in store for them. The good thing was that, although it was hard to believe, neither of them had a cell phone. I guess I thought that every person had one these days, but there were still people who didn't have it. Janna tried to persuade me to buy her the same iPhone as mine. Good thing I haven't done this yet. I stopped at an electronics store that sold several phone recording products. I got everything I needed. I was late for kindergarten. This was the first time I had been late, so Mrs. Crenshaw, the woman who ran the place, just laughed at how upset I was about it. She took me to her office to talk about Ellie. Mike, I know you're a great father, but Ellie is a little behind what she should be at her age. I know you no longer live with her mother, and I seriously think that's part of the problem. The state requires me to report any evidence of neglect. When she started expressing her suspicions to me, I became nervous. Mike, don't worry about it, she said. Perhaps this will be useful to you. While she was checking on a couple of my other kids, I mentioned Ellie to a friend of mine who works at CPS. Did you know that several people, including a couple of teachers, have made inquiries about the deteriorating conditions in your daughter's home? If children are considered endangered, they may be placed in the home of another close relative. If something happens, you may be able to get custody of your daughter. This is great. At that moment, I broke down. Mrs. Crenshaw went into shock. She closed the door to her office and called one of her assistants. She told the woman to feed Ellie and get her ready, but she wouldn't leave for another half hour or so. Then she turned to me. Okay, Mike, what's going on? She asked. I told her everything. From the first time I met Leanne to what I learned that day. When she listened to me, her eyes were huge. I wasn't sure she was even breathing. After I finished, she just stared at me. Poor man, she said. Do you know who her biological father is? I'm not sure Leanne even knows who Ellie's father is. I signed her birth certificate, and I am listed as... Mike, I asked you who got Leanne pregnant, she said. We already know who her father is. It's in the records. Who is this? I asked. You, Mike, she said. Do you love this little girl? More than anything, I said. That's enough for me, she said. A few minutes later, I went to pick up Ellie to take her home. She reached out to me as soon as she saw me. Yes, yes, she said loudly. You know what I mean, Mrs. Crenshaw said. She only sees you. To this little girl, no one else matters. We take care of her all day, but it doesn't matter when you're here. So, another aspect of my revenge has failed. Although I knew that Ellie was not mine, I was trapped. I couldn't leave this little girl any more than I could cut off my own head. When I got to Lynn's house, she didn't even notice how late we were. I don't think she cared. The children ran around and did whatever they wanted. Unlike when I lived there, they looked dirty and unkempt. They gathered around to talk to me, as always. I gave Terry some money to buy McDonald's for all the kids. Oh, hi, Mike, Leanne said. You and I need to talk. This place is going to hell. I'll need help. I need you to hire me as a housekeeper and a nanny. Leanne, you don't have a job, I said, so you have nothing to do all day except clean the house and take care of Ellie. Look, Mike, I know she's my daughter, but Jean should come second in your life. Janna is just the person you sleep with. Ellie is your daughter. You can't let her be taken away from us because those idiots at CPS are going to do it. If you come up with a better plan, let me know. Maybe Ellie could live with me and Janna, I said jokingly. As long as I get child support, I don't care, she said. But you better clear this up with your fiancé first. She might get a little jealous when it comes to you, and you're just being stupid about this kid, Mike. I don't think Jean would want to play second fiddle to a 1-year-old in her own home. Moreover, she is now carrying your next child, and when he is born, there will definitely be a conflict. I think Ellie will do better here. But if you can work it out, I don't mind. If you want a couple more, we can talk about that too. You're right, Lynn, I said. Maybe I can find a cheaper daycare and give you the money we save. You could give them to your housekeeper. Now you're talking, Mike, she smiled. Don't tell Janna about this conversation, okay? When I returned home, Janna, as always, came running to me. Now I watched her every move differently. I began to question the motives behind everything she did. I loved it when she ran towards me, as if she missed me and couldn't wait to see me. But I began to doubt her sincerity. Do women even do these things? None of my friends' wives or girlfriends did this. The only person I knew who did this was Leanne. Then I noticed that Janna was looking at me intently. What happened, Mike? She asked. The way she looked at me was different from the way a 20-year-old girl from a trailer park looks at the man of her dreams. It was calculating and cold. I talked to Lynn today, I said. We have a problem, and since we are getting married soon, I need you to be part of the decision-making process. She relaxed, and her expression returned to that of her 20s. She took my hand and smiled, looking at me. Is this a you and me problem or a you and my mom problem? She asked. This is a problem for the four of us, I said. I told her about the problems with Ellie, even though I promised Lynn I wouldn't. Her reaction told me that she already knew about it. Lynn probably called her and told her what to say while I was driving home. I was even more sure that Leanne was controlling my life remotely through her daughter. Jean's words sounded like they came straight from Lynn's mouth. Wow, I'm glad we worked this out, I said. Then I walked around Janna. While she was taking a shower, I could install a voice recorder on the phone. It took me another 2 weeks to figure out what I was going to do. I knew a big part of it had to do with my acting. I was pretty sure that neither Lynn nor Jean knew that I knew what they were doing. Leanne tried to make peace with me at every turn, and Janna looked more and more beautiful every day. It seemed that the larger her belly was, the more radiant she became. Mrs. Crenshaw gave me more and more information. She suggested that instead of kindergarten, I send Ellie to a developmental program. This is where I got lucky. I was worried about Ellie. I wanted her to grow up to be a normal, healthy girl. So I Googled early childhood development and found several experts in our field. One of them, Mildred Cross, was an old friend of my parents. I went to her. Unfortunately, she had just retired, but she agreed to listen to my problem. I told her about Ellie and what I needed. I explained to her that I only needed her to work with Ellie for about 3 weeks. She wasn't sure what she could do at that time, but she agreed to try. She wanted to see the environment Ellie grew up in so she knew what she was working against. I explained Lynn's situation to her again. Then I had an idea. She could pretend that her job was to pick up Ellie and drop her off every day. That way, she could take stock of the situation in the house while she waited for Leanne to get Ellie dressed and ready. So when I stopped to pick up Ellie, I walked into Lynn's bedroom. "Don't you know how to knock?" she asked angrily. I laughed inside. I knew she was faking it. She slept with one eye open, like a damn cat. She probably woke up as soon as she heard my Mustang pull into the rutted driveway. I noticed that no matter how angry she was that I was in her room, she made no effort to close them. It's time to show this bitch that I can play her game too. "Lynn, I knocked," I said. "You probably didn't hear me because you were sleeping." Now she was trapped. She couldn't call me a liar without saying that she was awake and therefore lying herself. "Whatever," she said. "I know why you are here. I miss you so much. And this time we won't tell Jean, but if you want, let it become a regular occurrence. We will have to tell her that I will not lie to my daughter. And losing you taught me that sleeping with someone and cheating on you is only harmful." "Lynn, how did you get hurt?" I asked. "I lost you, fool. I love you. Having you here in this house and in my bed has been the best time of my life. It was even better than before I lost my husband." "Liana, he wasn't your damn husband, and you didn't lose him. He didn't die, he just got tired of your bullshit and left you at Walmart," I said. "I can't believe she told you this," she hissed. "Well, come on, dear. Come here." "Liana, that's not what I came here for," I said. "So why did you come, Mike? You didn't come for sex. There's lemonade in the fridge, and I'm no good for you anymore, so—" Her voice was softer than usual and lacked the usual irony. I sat down on the edge of the bed. I wasn't heartless. I handed her $100 bill. "Why is this?" she asked. "I found a cheaper daycare for Ellie. It took me a while because I wanted to make sure it was a good place. It had to have all the bright colors that she loves, and there were good people there. I had to make sure that there's everything there for her to continue learning because she's a smart little girl." I took her hand and began my Oscar-winning performance. "We made a beautiful baby, Liana," I said. "It's a shame it can be so bad sometimes." "I regret it too," she said, squeezing my hand for emphasis. "I always wish you didn't hate me so much." "It's not really hatred, Liana," I said quietly. "It's more like pain. You hurt me very much. You know that you were my first true adult love. You made me grow up and taught me so much about life and love that I can't even describe it. When I walked in here that day, well, you know why I came home earlier. It broke me. You were my whole world. That's why I was so angry. You were right. You can do whatever you want with it. But I had the idea that it belonged to me. I really wanted it to be so." "Then why couldn't you forgive me?" she asked. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I was sure they were fake. "Why couldn't you give me another chance? Mike, I loved you too. More than any man in my life. Mike, I always have been. That's all I know. But you were the most special thing and I never wanted to hurt you. I would have died before this happened. I was just so used to it. I would have given anything to go back and do everything differently. Everything would be different." She then held out her hand for me to shake. "Hi, nice to meet you. My name is Liana. I'm 30. I'm 40 years old and I have 6 children," she said, shaking my hand. "That's what I should have said when we first met. And Mike, I wouldn't change a thing about the time we spent together. I loved every damn second of it. Yes, I'm much older than you thought, but you were the only man who ever wanted to marry me. Everyone else just slept with me until they got tired of it, and then, Mike, just go to work. take Ellie and go. Leanne, starting tomorrow, the woman from the kindergarten will pick Ellie up in the morning and drop her off in the evening, I said. Her eyes widened faster than I've ever seen. But you'll still come by to see her, won't you? She asked. She seemed even more upset. Of course, I said. I closed the door softly and went to Ellie's room. She was standing in a crib, which was clearly too small for her. But if everything works out the way I want, she'll have a new crib and everything else she needs in less than a month. As I prepared her to leave, I heard crying from Leanne's room. This got me thinking. I was pretty sure Leanne was playing the whole time, but I may have hit one or two of her weak points. Another thought that occurred to me while I was driving Ellie to Mildred was that I couldn't wait to check the phones. I was sure that Leanne would be calling Jean very soon to tell her daughter about how stupid old Mike had given her another $100 a week. I spent some time at work discussing with co-workers who worked on gas lines and furnaces. Jean called me at lunchtime. "Can you come home, honey?" she asked. "I'm having quite a busy day today, Jean," I said. "Mike, I love you," she said. "I love you too," I said. "Mike, do you love me the same way you loved my mother?" she asked. "If you had the chance, would you go back to her?" "Jean, darling, you are everything I loved about your mother, only in a younger and more beautiful version. And what I love most about you is that I can trust you. I don't have to worry that you'll sleep with some guy you once knew. You're the one I want to have kids with. Maybe your mom is like that because we've had to struggle a lot in life. We don't need that. We'll have a wonderful life. We'll have everything we want. The first thing we need to do is buy you your own car. And after the baby is born, we'll go on vacation, wherever you want. But Jean, I also want something. This is something you can help me with." "I'll do anything for you, Mike," she said. "Well, that's a double benefit," I said. "I mean, what I want from you comes in two parts." "Okay, what's the first part?" she asked. "I have some savings. I can probably find 50, and I want to give it to your mom." "But you just gave her." She suddenly blurted out. "So we don't have to give her our money, Mike. Is it out of guilt that we left her?" "Jan, let me finish," I said. She nodded. "She almost told me that she knew I gave her mom $100 this morning. That told me that he and Leanne were talking again. I really needed to check the records. What I want is to give Leanne the money and for her to give us custody of Ellie. It will be better for everyone. Ellie will be better. She won't be just one of the many neglected children. It will be easier for Leanne to get rid of child protective services. Everyone will be happier." "What about me?" she asked. "I know," I said. "This will be harder for you, but—" "Mike, I love you," she said. "I would be happy to take care of both of our children, and I love my little sister to death. But my mom won't sell Ellie to you for $50. "Jean, I was talking about $50,000, I said. Her eyes widened. "It's every penny I have in the bank and my investments. I saved $30,000 because living in that small apartment before we moved in together, I was able to save about half of my salary. I have an era where the company matches my contributions, and I can take out a loan against her and pay it off from my salary. Jean, I want my daughter to be with me, but it will be great if Ellie is here with us." Janna was still shocked by the amount of money. "Ah, okay, honey. I'll talk to her," she said. "I might be able to find some more money," I said, "and make sure she knows she can come visit Ellie whenever she wants." "Mike, is this our vacation and honeymoon money?" she asked. "I'll make more money," I said. "Give me time to think about how to approach my mother," she said. "I think we should get to work." "Above what?" I asked. "Well, honey, there's a pregnant girl living in our house, and as far as I'm concerned, if the right man offers her one of those filet mignon dishes they sell at Texas Roadhouse, that man will have a night he won't forget. So is this offer for the first person to respond, or should it be for a specific person?" I asked. "It must be a certain person," she giggled. "But pregnant girls can be really moody with the right man. At least this one can. But if he doesn't hurry, she might just fall asleep." "Bye," I shouted. Before I knew what Jean was really doing, I would have believed her. But now I knew that the main reason she sent me to get food was so she could call her mother. What she didn't know was that it was important for me to leave too. I changed the tape in the recorder and wanted to listen to what they were talking about in the morning. I went to the restaurant and made an order. Then I went out to the car while they prepared the food. I immediately started listening to the recording. Jean, Leanne said, "We have a problem. We need to figure out a way to get Mike back." "Mom, I thought you weren't worried about getting money from him," said Jean. "I thought you said you really loved Ronnie and just wanted a place for yourself and for your child to be provided for," Leanne said. "Mom, Ronnie is no good. He can never take care of me or my baby. Be serious. Ronnie is just sex to me. I call him, meet him, get what I need, and then go home to wait. Mike, Mike will take me somewhere and take care of me. So basically, he's your breadwinner, just like I taught you. Well done, daughter. I'm proud of you. But Jean, we can make this work for both of us. Maybe you should tell Mike you miss your family and want to go home," Leanne said. "Why the hell would I do something so stupid?" asked Jean. "You could tell that you miss your brothers and little sister, and Mike would probably enjoy seeing Ellie all the time," Leanne said. "Mom, I left this place so I wouldn't have to constantly take care of your children. I don't love them more than you do. So no," Janna said. "Jean, I hate to admit it, dear, but I think I'm really attracted to him. And you're young, you still have a lot of time to find someone else, and Lion began. "Och, damn, ugh," Janna spat. "If you hadn't cheated, you would still have him. And don't try to deceive me, Mom. To have feelings, you need to have a heart. All your own children are a source of income for you. And I was just your damn maid. I think you're starting to see the big picture, Mom. This new governor is talking about welfare reform. No matter how many children you have, you will not receive a penny. In the meantime, Mike is making very good money, and we will make even more in the future. Add to this the fact that he's a really nice guy who's very easy to fool, and it's clear that this is bullshit. You just need my money tree, no deal." "I'm your mother," Leanne said. "We are family." "Mom, I think I have feelings for him too." "I'm holding it," Janna said. "In that case, I might have to make sure he finds out about you and Ronnie. Maybe I'll explain to him why the baby you're carrying isn't his," Leanne said. "And if you do that, I'll have him do a DNA test on Ellie, and we'll both be in shit," Jean said. "Mom, you dropped the ball. You made a mistake." "I returned the ball. But since we are on the same team, everything is fine. We can still score. But if we fight each other, we will both lose." Then Janna hung up. I smiled and returned to the restaurant. Goodwill towards both of them began to drive a wedge between them. I overheard their next conversation on the way to Lynn's house the next morning. "Mom, we need to talk quickly," Janna said. "Just listen. I need a yes or no answer. You've been receiving benefits for 20 years. As I told you, the new governor is going to limit it to 2 years. That means 2 years, maybe less for you. The feeding trough will end. All your years of experience working with the system and extorting money from taxpayers will end. You need to earn it now before it's too late." "What are you talking about, airhead?" Lynn asked. "Can you just get to the point?" "I want Ellie," said Jean. "If you let her live with us, in the long run, you'll have one less child to get rid of. You're getting old, Mom." "You're crazy," Leanne spat. "She's the only one I get cash for. The money I receive from the state for other children is not money. They help us with our mortgage, but it's not cash. I have a bridge card that I can use to buy food and medicine. I can't do my damn hair with this. I won't give it up for anything. I know you, Jean Marie. I taught you all the dirty tricks you know. I just want this brat to give you more leverage over Mike and take some away from me. Damn, you can't take her away." "Mom, Ellie is my sister. I love her. What if I convince Mike to give you $5,000, said Janna. Leanne fell silent. As I listened to the recording, I could almost hear the wheels turning in her head. Suddenly, Lynn started laughing. "Okay, Janna, how much money is there really?" How much does your fiancé want my holy, beautiful daughter? She asked. Okay, there are 20,000, said Janna. Maybe he can get a little more. But Mom, this is my wedding money. The idiot is obsessed with Ellie. He has all these ridiculous ideas about trying to be a good father and all this bullshit. What a fool. I'll split it 50-50 with you. Why do you need money? Lynn asked. You have Mike. Over the years, he will only earn more. I'll give you 20% of the search reward. Come on, Mom, I'm 30% your daughter, Janna asked. 25%, Lynn offered. Done, said Janna. I'll talk to Mike about it tomorrow, Lynn said. In fact, I still have his cell phone number. I'll call him right now to see if I can shake down a few more dollars. But don't worry, you'll get your 5,000. Lynn didn't call me. And when I went to check on Ellie before Mildred picked her up that morning, Leanne tried to tease again, but didn't mention anything else. However, one good thing happened that morning. As I was leaving, Terry, Lynn's oldest remaining child, called out to me. Mike, I got what you wanted, he whispered. He handed me a piece of paper with a phone number. I handed him $50. His eyes became greedy. Is it true that you are buying a child? He asked. Perhaps why are you interested? I asked. It just doesn't seem reasonable, he said. But I hope you do. I'm so tired of taking care of her that I just want her to go away. But why would you have to do so much work to change her and feed her? It's not smart, Mike. He turned to leave, still clutching the money. Terry, doesn't your mom take care of Ellie sometimes? I asked. Mom barely knows where the baby's room is, he said. The day you and Jean left, I took control. Please pay Mom. I went to work, and while I was there, I called the number Terry gave me. At the end of the conversation, the person on the other line agreed to help me. It's time to end this little drama. I only had a few things to do. Returning to Leanne's house that evening, I quickly went down to the basement before checking on Ellie. I played with Ellie for a while. I saw Lynn out of the corner of my eye a couple of times. She looked at me and Ellie and then ducked away. When I got home, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to my boss. I asked about how he was promoting my business. He contacted a friend and got me a job in another state. When he told me everything was settled, I thanked him and asked for the next day off. The second call was from Ronnie. This was the number Terry gave me. That night, I went to bed. Jean seemed almost offended that I didn't want to have sex with her. Mike, did I do something wrong? She asked. I don't know, I said. And you? Mike, I'm not my mother. I swear to you that since we've been together, I haven't slept with anyone else, she said. What about Ellie and the money? I asked. Even in the dark, I saw her smiling. She furrowed her eyebrows and pretended to be angry. Okay, Michael, she said. I lied to my mother to save us money. Think about it. I lied to my own mother to get something for you. If that doesn't prove I love you, I don't know what does. Mike, why is Ellie so important to you? She asked. Don't forget that you have me, and we're going to have our own child, you know. You can't always get everything you want. The next day, I was very nervous. I was nearing the end of this little drama and was looking forward to it. I don't know how Leanne and Jean managed to remember all their lies and keep their schemes in their heads. I couldn't, but they obviously lived like that. I woke up Janna and made her breakfast. She was delighted that I stayed home with her. Shall we go back to bed now, dear? She asked. No, we'll go visit your mom and invite her to dinner, I said. 2 hours later, we went to Leanne's house. I didn't leave Janna's side the whole time while Leanne was getting ready. I wanted to make sure they didn't have the opportunity to make plans or plot anything. When we arrived at the restaurant, we ordered food. We had a little conversation while we ate. Leanne mentioned that her oven wasn't working. I said I would come and check it out for her. After lunch, Leanne started talking. Mike, let's figure it out, she said. How much money did you offer for me to give up custody of our daughter? I looked at her as if I didn't understand what she was talking about. Mike, I think Jean lied to me about $20,000, she said. It was 50, I said. Leanne immediately turned to Jean. You lying bitch, she blurted out. "Mike, I'll take them," she said, "but I have a better offer for you. Forgiveness means freedom. If you forgive what I did and come back to me, you will have Ellie for free." "Mom," cried Jean, "what are you trying to do?" "No, thank you, Leanne," I said. "So will it be cash or check?" "I'd prefer cash," she said. "Neither," I said. I took the paper out of my pocket. Leanne looked at her. "What does it mean?" she asked. "This is my kindness," I said. "This is a termination document. I took a DNA test. Ellie is not my daughter. This list of numbers is the sum of all the child support I paid you. I was told that I could sue you to get it back, but I decided that enough damage has already been done. We're even." She sat there in shock. No words came out of her mouth. "Leanne, I don't know what I ever did to you to make you continue to hurt me like this, but you are completely out of my life. I never want to see you again." Jean grabbed my hand. "Mike, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swear." I just looked at her. "What about Ellie, Mike?" Leanne asked. "This little girl loves you. It's better for both of us if I don't see her anymore. I'm already too attached to her," I said. "Her daycare is paid for until the end of the month. After that, you'll have to take care of the payments yourself. If you don't cause any problems, I'll pay for another month so you can take care of things at home. CPS has opened an investigation into you." "I shouldn't have. I don't want to say this, but I don't want her to be taken away from you. Treat her better, Leanne." "Are you sure, dear?" asked Jean. "I know you loved her, and our child could have had an aunt to grow up with." "I'm sure they'll grow up together," I said sadly. "I meant in the same house, Mike," she said. I saw through it. She was trying to figure out a way to still give money to her mother. "They'll probably be in the same house," I said. "Goodbye, Jean. I loved you too." "Mike, wait," she said. "I'm on your side. To hell with my mother. I don't need her. I didn't know Ellie wasn't yours. I know you're hurt, but you have to think about it soberly. I'm not involved in this." I raised my hand and Ronnie walked over to the table. Jean looked at him as if she didn't know who he was. "Who is this?" she asked. He came closer to her. "Hey, Jean, it's me, Ronnie. Remember, the useless guy who will never amount to anything. I told Mike how you let me give up my parental rights. Remember how you said we were too young to have a baby, so we should give him up for adoption? Remember how we were supposed to start a new life together? It looks like you'll be raising your child alone." "Jean, you need to go back to your mom tonight," I said. "I'll pack my things and leave. You can come back to the apartment tomorrow night. I'm getting a job in Chicago." "No, Mike," she sobbed. "I made a mistake, but I never cheated on you." I put the recorder on the table with all the phone conversations, including several where she called me a fool and spoke badly about Ronnie, pressed play, and left. The next afternoon, I flew to Texas. I immediately started looking for a place. I needed to find him because I only had 2 weeks. A few days after I left, Mildred told me how upset and sad Ellie was. "She misses Daddy," Mildred said. "She's still a child. She can handle this. Are you reporting to CPS? I have some problems with them." Lynn said. "At the end of the month, I am contracted to prepare a report on Ellie's progress," Mildred said. "Perhaps you could provide them with a copy of the report." "Good idea," Lynn said. "Even though he doesn't know it, Mike still helps me." "He loves his new job in Chicago, too," Mildred said. "It's cold. You might want to turn on the stove." Every day Ronnie called me and told me what was happening. Deirdre remembered Ronnie from his time with Jean. She thought he was a nice young man. She thought he was wandering around the area, trying to get back to Jean. She invited him to her home several times while Hal was away. She thought she was helping him with Janna, but they became friends. It didn't take me 2 weeks. 10 days later, I had a new apartment. I instructed the crew to clean up and buy as much furniture as we needed. My timing was good. I flew back to Michigan early one morning and showed up at Mildred's house right after she picked up Ellie. Ellie was glad to see me. I hugged her and carried her with me as if I would never see her again. I paid Mildred her last check and told her we wouldn't need the report. Mildred told me she was glad I was back in Ellie's life because she didn't think very highly of Lynn. Mildred had no idea what was going on. Lynn had no idea where or even how to contact Mildred. I flew back to Texas with Ellie. I figured my plan would leave everyone confused and unable to worry about her. As soon as the pilot cleared cell phone use, I called Ronnie and asked the same question I had asked him every day since leaving Michigan. "These cheaters came to your house," he said. "All the children are at school. Should I press the button?" "No, Ronnie," I said. "Delete the program. Enjoy college and make something of your life. We're done with this." Ronnie didn't even know what he was doing. He thought the iPad I gave him as a gift for his help was recording Leanne's phone conversations. I also paid for his first semester at a local community college. Ronnie was so upset by what Jean had done that he was determined to succeed. I asked him to check the house and count the number of people who left each day. I told him that if anyone was in the house, they would hear the phone turning on and we would be caught, so he needed to be careful. He truly believed that every time he pressed the button, we would get a bunch of recordings of their calls. The iPad was actually the controller for Leanne's stove. Ronnie deleted the app that controlled the stove, and it turned on immediately. About 10 minutes passed. Ronnie and Deirdre were drinking tea and talking about his plans when the explosion happened. Leanne's house was destroyed. When firefighters arrived, they put out the flames, but there was nothing left to save. Leanne and Jean returned about an hour later. They were busy transporting furniture from the apartment that Janna and I rented. Now that Leanne's house was destroyed, they had nowhere to go. Leanne didn't have insurance, so she lost her house. They decided that the only thing they could do was move all her children into the two-room apartment we were renting. The landlord refused. He saw two women moving things back and forth from the apartment. None of them were registered as tenants. He recognized Jean, but did not trust her or her mother. When they arrived with 4 children, he called the police. The police called Child Protective Services because children were involved, and when they learned that Leanne was already under investigation, they took custody of the children. It is a terrible thing for a mother to lose her children, but at least the children were in better conditions. They were all eventually placed with an energetic middle-aged couple who were unable to have children of their own. They loved and spoiled them. Somehow it happened that Ellie escaped the attention of the system. Child welfare workers took all of Leanne's children. They never knew there was another child. Most of the complaints came from teachers of Leanne's school-aged children. When all the children were placed, they closed the case. Leanne, on the other hand, assumed that Ellie had also gotten into the system. She did not have the resources to care for any of her children. She didn't need to worry. The only person who loved and cared about Ellie was me. Leanne and Jean ended up in a women's shelter. To make money, Leanne started using one of her 2 skills, and it wasn't making lemonade. Leanne was kicked out of the shelter. Jean decided to stay there. They lost contact. Jean went on unemployment benefits, and Leanne ended up on the street. All this happened a year ago. Ellie is now just over 2 years old. The first place we lived when we moved here was an apartment. I saved up some money and just bought this place because she needed a yard and a place to grow. She needs a neighborhood and the opportunity to be part of a family. "I don't know why I told you all this, Rita," I said. "For the year that I had her, I never told anyone about us. I never let anyone close enough to ask. I did some really bad things in response to what was done to me. I guess to those who listen to what I say, I'm just as bad as everyone else. The worst of my crimes is that I stole a child. But her mother never loved her, and we have no idea who her father is. I guess technically I should be in jail for kidnapping. I swear, as soon as Ellie is old enough to understand this, I will tell her and give in. I think I only told you this because, Rita, maybe it's just me, but I felt something between us, and I wanted you to know that you are not alone. I wanted you to know that sometimes people are just shitty, no matter how cute you are. I never intended to hurt anyone, and neither did you. The circumstances that brought us here are just the result of what happened to us." She just looked at me. Mike, I don't know what to say, she said. The people around you got what they deserved. As for Ellie, Mike, you love her. You have had a connection since she was born. The most appropriate punishment for your crime is that you be given the responsibility of caring for her until she grows up and becomes independent. At least that's what I would say. But you're a lonely guy. When it comes to raising a little girl, you'll need help with a lot of things. It will be especially difficult for you when she reaches adolescence. But you're a good guy. I'm sure you will find the right woman. As for me, I will keep your secret. I kissed her. Mike, I told you I'm not like that, she said sharply. Remember the 3-date rule. Sorry, Rita, apparently our signals got mixed up. I'd wait 30 dates for you. I really think you're worth it, I said. Something flashed across her face. It softened. Your apology is accepted, she said. Now walk me to the door. I took her hand and helped her get up. For a woman of her size, she was surprisingly light. I walked her across the lawn to her door. Good night, Rita, I said. Aren't you going to kiss me goodbye? She asked. That's probably not the best idea, I said. It's already hard for me to say goodbye. Is there anything we can plan for tomorrow? We'll see, she said. She closed the door, and I walked back across the lawn. I entered the house and, as usual, checked on Ellie. After I left Ellie's room, I heard a knock on the door. I went to the door and saw Rita. She was wearing a long silk robe, and apparently she had nothing else on. I looked away. Let me guess, you were getting ready to go to bed and realized you forgot something, I asked. I was thinking about that evil woman who broke your heart, she said. She was holding a small box. That bitch made you suspicious and distrustful of everyone. Remember how you ran away from me earlier today? I nodded. Light the fireplace again? I'll be back soon, she said. She went to the kitchen. I should have gone to hell for the thoughts I had while I watched her walk away. She returned 5 minutes later, carrying a glass. Mike, close your eyes, she said. I closed them, and she placed the glass in my hand. Why should I close my eyes? Your senses, such as taste, touch, and smell, become more intense when you use less of the others, she said. Okay, what now? I asked. Just try it, silly, she said. I took a careful sip. Damn, this is delicious, I said. Can I open my eyes? This is the best lemonade I've ever had. Mine isn't as famous, but I try, she laughed. Better than Leanne's? Much better, I said. You can open your eyes now, Mike, she said. You've already tasted the lemonade. I think you know what's coming next, she said. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.